It's 3:15, and that means it's time for
The Real Deal with Bill McNeil.
That's right. Welcome once again to The Real Deal with Bill McNeil. I'm your host, Bill McNeil, and you're probably wondering exactly what is the real deal today.
Hey, good question.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. It has long been a hot debate within the comic book industry over here in North America on, traditional North American comics versus manga. A lot of people say that manga is wiping the floor with comic books. We've certainly talked about this here on the channel, and I have even said I'm considering starting to review manga here on the channel until I saw all of these false DMCA claims that have been going around YouTube for years now, even though the company Shueisha has actually confirmed that they are not filing those complaints, that somebody is doing that without their knowledge. And yet YouTube continues striking people's channels. So I'm probably not going to be able to do that until that problem's taken care of. But I am very interested in manga. I'm reading manga. I don't talk about a lot here on the channel, but I am reading manga. And I can see why some people would turn their eye from DC, Marvel, Image over to manga and what's going on that side of the earth. Because there are some exciting things going on in Japan as far as comic book storytelling. This is going to surprise some people. Weekly Shōnen Jump has fallen to the lowest sales it's had in half a century. In the 1970s was the last time they've seen sales this low. Does that sound familiar to you as far as sales for comic books? It probably should. We are in a bit of a drought within North American comic books as well. And when I get to these numbers, it's going to be shocking when I tell you exactly how far this is fallen. But here are the details. Sales for Shōnen Jump, Weekly Shōnen Jump, have hit a surprising low based on new reports. Current numbers reflect the lowest sales for the manga magazine in nearly 50 years. Sales have not been this low since around 1974. Shueisha's Weekly Shōnen Jump began in 1968 and is one of the best-selling manga publications in the world. It competes with Weekly Shonen Sunday and Weekly Shonen Magazine, and is part of Shueisha's many manga offerings. It has published some of the highest-selling manga series of all time, including One Piece, Dragon Ball, Naruto, and Demon Slayer. I'm not going to say the rest of that. I personally am reading Demon Slayer right now, as well as My Hero Academia. Manga has been very hot in Europe, in North America, and certainly in Japan. In the last few years, they have seen a significant rise in sales. However, a decrease is now occurring based on industry reporting. This fall is significant since sales have reached levels that haven't been seen in 50 years, since the 1970s. Newly released sales data from the Japan Magazine Publishers Association has revealed, this is going to be terrible. Jaws are about to hit the floor. That the average number of copies sold for this year, 2020 to 2021, is 1.4 million copies per issue released. That is stunning. Can you believe it's dropped all the way down to where it can only sell 1.4 million copies weekly? My goodness. Now this is okay. I'm being sarcastic because it's actually a really good number, but we haven't seen numbers like this in quite some time. And the high mark for Shōnen Jump, as far as a weekly publication, were in 1995 at 6.5 million. That is an important number we're going to talk about here in a second. 1.4 million copies sold. The last comic book in North America to sell over 1 million copies was Star Wars #1. It's like 10 years ago, something like that. And there is a qualifier on that one. Disney bought like 600,000 copies and shipped them out in the little boxes, the little Star Wars boxes that you get in the mail, right? With your little, when you get your Funko Pop, you get a T-shirt, and that week or that month, you got a Star Wars #1 comic book. So that number is inflated by itself. There hasn't been a U.S. comic book that is sniffed 1.4 million copies sold in a very, very long time. Weekly Shōnen Jump is selling that weekly, on average. That is absolutely insane. I said the number 6.5 million in 1995 is going to be important. If you remember, that is essentially the exact same number as Death is Superman in 1992. A very, very high-selling comic book indeed. Now, Weekly Shōnen Jump in 1995 hit its high water mark at 6.5 million. Superman hit its high water mark at 6.5 million in 1992. Shōnen Jump has dropped all the way down to the terrifying number of 1.4 million copies sold every single week. The last big Superman event, Man of Steel, Brian Michael Bendis, in 2018, issue number 1 sold 79,000 copies. And that was considered an enormous success at the time. 1.4 million, 79,000. Think about the difference there. Also think about it in these terms. There are 330 million people in the United States. That's not including Canada, which is definitely part of the North American comic book market. Weekly Shōnen Jump is released in Japan. There are 125 million people in Japan. So there are over 200 million more people in the United States than Japan. They are still able to sell 1.4 million copies of Weekly Shōnen Jump, whereas the last big Superman event was able to sell 80,000. If you needed anything else to really solidify in your mind the difference as far as where these two industries are, manga versus U.S. comic books, that's all you need to know. That going down to 1.4 million is a disappointment for Shueisha's Weekly Shōnen Jump, whereas DC Comics shipping and selling, they sold it to the retailers, maybe not to the customers. 79,000 of Man of Steel number 1 was a huge success. I don't want to hear it anymore. Manga and DC and Marvel are not the same. Sure, they are similar products, but we do not compare U.S. Major League Baseball to Japanese baseball. Yeah, they're the same sport. They're doing similar things, different audiences, and hey, there's a reason that we aren't able to ship in Japanese baseball and overtake Major League Baseball, because people they have not lost faith in Major League Baseball and what they're offering, right? So you can go over and you can watch Japanese baseball or whatever. You can even be a fan, but they are not overtaking the U.S. or the baseball market. And you also have to think about it this way. One of the potential reasons for this decline in sales as far as the Weekly Shōnen Jump print is because of digital readership, particularly with Shōnen Jump and their digital app, which is only, I believe, $2 a month. There is an extensive movement from print to digital going on in Japan. They have figured out the code. They have figured out how to convert print readers to digital readers within Japan. And they've done so very well. They've certainly done it worldwide because that app is very successful. In 2019, the Shōnen Jump website and app had 2.4 million active users, i.e., they were subscribed, they were paying, and they were reading the comic books. And as of January 2020, and I bet you this number is much bigger now that we've gone fully through the pandemic, the app has been downloaded more than 13 million times. How many active users do you think DC Unlimited, or is it DC Universe? DC Infinite Universe has? 12,000 maybe? Maybe 15,000? I don't know. I'm just guessing. What do you think Marvel Unlimited has? Maybe 20,000 max? What do you think Comixology has? 15, 20,000 maybe? 2.4 million for Weekly Shōnen Jump. Even though they're still selling 1.4 million copies of their flagship, or one of their flagship, a Weekly Shōnen Jump magazines. And then they have another 2.4 million active users as of January or as of 2019, likely larger now. Insane. If you can't understand, if you cannot comprehend that Marvel and DC haven't been passed, they're being lapped. They're being made to look foolish. They're being made to look like they're not even in the same league. They're not playing the same sport. You know what I mean? Marvel and DC are playing, they're tossing around water balloons while these guys are out there playing football, Major League Football. It's insane, the difference at the level of execution, the quantity that they're getting out there, the massive amount of readers. They can't keep manga on shelves in America right now. They can't give away a lot of these comic books in local comic shops because they have to overorder to get the only comics of value in a lot of these ratio variants. So comic shops, they're the ones that are taking the risk. They know their own numbers, and I'm not faulting them for that, and I'm not saying that they're doing anything wrong. But they are buying those comics knowing full well a lot of times they aren't going to sell a lot of them, but they need to get their hands on those ratio variants so they can actually have a comic book that can bring in some money right now. They're in two different places. Weekly Shōnen Jump hit, it's nadir. 50 years, sales haven't been this low. 1.4 million copies. Outsells anything print-wise that's being printed periodically. And the only things that are outselling those numbers in America right now really are manga volumes. It's crazy. And obviously those aren't released weekly. Those aren't released monthly. Those come out a little bit more sporadically than that. And it doesn't really even tell the entire story, because while that's happening in Japan, manga is fueling all the growth that's happening in America. They've taken over and pantsed Marvel and DC in their own market, in their own country, in their own house. They kicked them out and said, you sit in the backyard, have fun in the shed. This is our house now. It's not a competition anymore. It's like Perch said, he's got that visual that he puts up where it's, Main Street comics are manga and some YA graphic novels like Dogman and stuff like that. Independent comics are DC, Marvel, and Image. And small publishers are like, Boom and stuff like that. It's a different game. And until DC, Marvel, and other companies, other publishers within North America, and everyone's going to follow Marvel's lead, we know that. Until they figure this out, and they can acknowledge what's happening out east, what's happening in Japan, and how they've moved into their territory and what they're doing to reach that audience that has decided to leave Marvel and DC and others in the past and go in a new direction, there's no recovery. There's no ability to recover. Sure, they can have a good month. They might even have a nice 2 or 3 year period. But as these things, you're like, DC and Marvel sales went up. You're going to look over there and you're going to see the manga sales are going to still be eclipsing it to such a degree in North America alone. And it's not even talking about the sales that are happening in Japan. Wake up, people. This is no joke. This is real. They're going to lose an industry by taking their eye off the ball, not realizing that the customer comes first and you have to write stories for them. You do not write stories to get headlines. You do not write stories for Twitter. You do not write stories for the writer. You write those stories for the customers, and you write what's going to be, best received, and you get it out there, and you get it out there big time, and you grow an audience instead of just driving one away. I just, it's crazy when you look at those numbers. That's all I got to say on that one. Shocking news! Weekly Shōnen Jump is at a 50-year low as far as sales. What's that say about DC and Marvel? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.